Thank you for joining For Our Special Kids, where we openly and honestly discuss the magic and the mess of raising a child with special needs. We are thrilled to have you here and hope this time provides you with some wonder and wisdom. I'm your host, Jennifer Lansing. Let's get started. Welcome, everyone. This is Jen. I hope the start of your new year was exactly what you needed it to be, or wanted it to be, I suppose. Before we jump into today's episode, I would like to ask you for some help. Will you tell 3 people about For Our Special Kids? Be it on Facebook or Instagram, or just by calling another mom or dad that's in your similar situation. I'd really appreciate it if you could share us with them. One of my hopes for 2023 is to create more of a community, really in order to decrease some of this loneliness that we're living in. Joell Dunlap on today's episode opens up about how the journey with an autistic child is a story of loneliness. And I added that a journey with any child with special needs can be extremely lonely at times. Now, I have many moments of feeling like no one understands me. No one gets my journey or my struggles. No one seems to understand that my body hurts in different ways because I carry a 6-year-old around all day and I lift her up and I put her in her car seat and I take her out again, and the twisting and the turning and I just hurt physically sometimes. And so it's not just an emotional hurt, it's a physical hurt sometimes too. So I want to create a community that addresses that, but I also want to really honor that it is magical and there are moments of mind-blowing, rewarding magic that happens, but it's hard. Laura of Mama Systems said it openly. Having a child with special needs is hard. So I'd like us to share together, to come up with solutions together, to laugh and cry together, because sometimes I feel like I have no one to reach out to share with, or to feel heard with. So if you will spread the word for me about our gracious, beautiful community of hearts on this journey together, I truly would appreciate it. All right. On to today's episode. So Joell Dunlap introduces us to her nonprofit organization called Square Peg Foundation. But Joell also shares her life lessons from having a son at 16, embracing her judgey self, as she says it, and her absolute adoration of horses and the magic they can provide the world. These lessons are wonderful. I know they'll impact you. So while Square Peg primarily works with autists, I think you'll gain quite a few life lessons on your own. Also, in the interview, we focus on how Joell has implemented a lot of Rupert Isaacson's horseboy method. And so if you'd like to listen to those episodes before jumping into today's interview, just check those out October 10th and 17th. And then we briefly mentioned Stephen Forth's work. His episodes are the 7th of November and the 12th of December. Okay, I hope you enjoy. And as always, please let me know what you think. Before I introduce Joell Dunlap, who's joining us today, I am going to read what's on her website. And if you want to go there, it's www.squarepegfoundation.org. But let me read this. It's so sweet. And then we're just going to jump into the foundation. We're going to talk about that and what you're doing and how you're just making amazing things happen. So this says, people often ask, how did Square Peg start? Square Peg started in my heart over 20 years ago. I was teaching a summer riding program in Sacramento at a privileged Montessori school. It was the first riding program of my own. I was all of 22 years old. One of the parents asked if her teenage daughter could help me for the summer. The girl had been in trouble with the law, and her mom wanted to keep her busy. She was a tough kid with a great heart. She was kind to the animals and considerate of the kids. We worked hard, side by side, and became close that summer. One morning, I found the girl clinging desperately to the neck of Lad, my giant, skittish, thoroughbred schoolmaster. She was sobbing her teenaged heart out. Lad bore her tears patiently and never moved a muscle.
I realized that this horse was a better listener and a better friend than anyone else in this troubled girl's life, including me. He didn't offer advice. He never told her that everything would be okay. He was simply there for her in the truest sense. It struck me that morning that the most important thing I had cultivated all summer long was not that I had built a successful riding program, but I had created the space for the bond a struggling young woman had developed with the tall, slim ex-racehorse. I knew this was something special. Okay, I've got shivers running all over me, and I almost cried reading that. Joelle, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. Tell us now, by the way, you're an amazing writer. Goodness, I'm assuming you wrote that because it's first person. Amazing writer. You're so eloquent with your words, and we're just honored to have you here. So will you tell me what Square Peg, or tell our listeners and me, what Square Peg Foundation is, what your mission is, and what you're doing now? Because that was quite a long time ago.
So Square Peg, we sought to fill what I saw was this huge gap between the therapeutic writing community, which is primarily designed for people with physical disabilities. It was originally set up for people with limb issues coming out of 2 world wars. And the traditional writing programs that are meant for rich kids that can be yelled at because it's a military art, right? And so we were taught to teach by shouting at people. That's how we were taught to teach writing and how we were taught to teach all sorts of things. And I thought, well, this doesn't really work for a huge group of people, right? And the therapeutic writing program wasn't going to work for a huge group of people. So what if Square Peg bridged that gap in between the two, people who weren't going to fit in either place? Well, of course, what found us was autism because it's the Square Peg story, right? So, but we did lots of things. You know, our first partner in running Square Peg is this family homeless shelter in the Tenderloin in San Francisco, and it's called Raphael House. And when you think about a homeless shelter, let alone a family homeless shelter, it's not an upbeat, happy story. Well, Raphael House set out to change that and to change the recidivism in homelessness through the eyes of the child by showing families the importance of family rituals, of eating together, of being in a place where they actually are emotionally and physically safe, and then helping that family get back into their community or back into housing. And we learned so much. We were so lucky to be mentored by them, just in the kind of nonprofit that we wanted to be, what we weren't going to do, whom we were going to serve, and really defining what our core values were so that all those little tiny decisions that you make in the moment were all reflecting what your ultimate mission was. When we were supposed to write our mission statement for Square Peg, this was in 2004. So the startup craze in San Francisco, I mean, you were still the cool kid if you were starting up a new organization. And we had all these smart people in the room, all these people who, had done tech startups. And I walked in and I said, I've got our mission statement. And so, they've got people like licking their pencil and ready to write down Square Peg sets out to la 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 la. Right. And I said, we're going to turn I wish into I can. And they looked at me like, and then I went, no, that's it. That's it.
Turning I wish into I can.
Yeah, that's it.
We could just stop our interview right there. I mean, that's just amazing.
That was it. Yeah.
Wow.
And, and half the room just exhaled and went, F, yeah.
Yeah.
And the other half went, no, back up. What are you going to do? And let's line it out. And I said, no, those are details. Everything else is just window dressing. And and how we get there, we're doing horses because that's what I know, but it doesn't mean that we couldn't do it with dance. We couldn't do it with music. We couldn't do it with theater arts. We couldn't do it with job training. We couldn't do it with educational theory. So that was the Square Peg birth story.
Tell me then, from 2004, how did it transition into primarily working with autists, or are you still working with a variety of different people?
Primarily, we work with people with autism. I mean, that's become my love, not even specifically people with autism, but I would say that our most important group that we serve are people that, because of behaviors, which is how I met Stephen, were precluded from all sorts of other recreational and behavioral and educational opportunities.
So you're referencing Stephen Forth, who's the behavior
yes.
dude, who's done some ABA stuff with us, and we just did the live Zoo with him, and et cetera.
Yeah.
You're ABA certified as well.
Yeah, and I have a graduate certificate in autism support. That came much later. You know, it really, the autism community just found us over and over again. We have never advertised. We don't even have a sign at the road, mostly because we want families to have privacy when they're here. And we have 140 families on the waiting list.
Oh my gosh, I just heard that. 140 families on the waiting list. Okay, so let's talk about what the family experiences when they come in. Like, what is the process?
We invite families out just to visit with no expectations. That's the first thing you do. And I'm going to credit Rupert Isaacson for that. So we had been operating, just to go back a little bit, we'd been operating for a few years, and, you know, autism was our thing. And I really had bucked a lot of systems. You know, we were doing a lot of things outside the box, as it were. Board treasurer came up to me and she says, I want you to go down to Malibu to do this training. And I'm like, you know, I don't do trainings. You know, I don't have time. I get bored. I get grouchy. This is just not going to work. And you know, it's not going to work. And she's like, Joelle, you need to get out of town. I'm going to pay for this training. You just go. And the night before I leave, my husband and I go out, we rent the Horseboy film. And I'm like, this guy needs a hairbrush and some chapstick. I mean, I was so rude. And then I went through the website, and this is a famous Horseboy story. I show up in Malibu.
No, this is the interview with Rupert Isaacson, a horseboy. There's 2 episodes with him as well. So Joelle's reference, he needs a hairbrush and chapstick.
Right. Okay, so I was so rude. I was, you know, there's a theme in my life when I am at my absolute judgiest, like worst, like chick moments, super judgy, that the universe just either hands me a cup of tea or just slaps me upside the head, or both. You know, usually both. And this is one of those stories. So, you know, I'd been through the website, and I just really get up on my high horse, and I drive down to Malibu, and I've got an agenda. So I'm sitting in Malibu, the Horseboy walks in, right? And
Rupert
he's
Isaacson
on the phone, and he's dealing with a bunch of stuff, right? He asks everybody to introduce themselves and say a little something about themselves. And he gets around to me, and I'm one of the last, and I have my arms crossed. I have my legs. I mean, my eyeballs were almost crossed. I was so shut down. And I said, I'm Joell Dunlap, and I run Square Peg Foundation. And he immediately jumps in. And he's like, what a brilliant name. And I'm like, yeah, anyway. Yeah, it was rude. I said, look, I'm just going to cut to the chase right here and now. I've been to your website. You've got a bunch of kids running around in Texas on horses, and nobody's wearing a helmet. And that's irresponsible. And it's just not cool. And he didn't bat an eye. He didn't step back. He didn't get aggressive. He just said, you know what? It's a really good point. I am in Texas, and if I made these kids wear helmets, nobody would trust me. They still put children in the back of pickup trucks and drive them around. Nobody wears seatbelts in Texas. If I made them wear helmets, they wouldn't trust me, and trust is the important thing. What's your next question?
Oh my God, I just got shivers.
Not upset. Yeah, I did too. Oh boy, I got my, you know, butt handed to me right then and there. This was not a guy who was going to argue with me. He was going to take everything, and he was listening, and he was focused on what was important.
Yeah.
And I thought, oh crap, now I got to listen to him. Now I have to actually sit up and pay attention.
Wow.
We've been close friends ever since. Yeah. Yeah. And that was probably 2008. And what else I found there was that I was really lonely, and I didn't know it. You know, I was doing this work. I was working with families, and I had no idea how lonely I was. And now I had a tribe of people, people that I could share stories with, people I could share frustration with, people that whose horsemanship that I deeply respected and I could be mentored by, and that it wasn't a lopsided relationship, that I could mentor them in running a nonprofit. It just felt good to be connected. Autism is really a story of loneliness and disconnection. Loneliness is probably the deadliest disease there is on the planet and the most preventable and treatable. And I didn't realize I was suffering from that disease until then, from a professional standpoint.
I'm going to jump in here just really quick, just to kind of connect that to probably a lot of what our listeners are just shaking their heads and saying, having a child with special needs, it immediately puts you away. I mean, it just puts you in a side box, whether or not I wouldn't give, I'm gonna cry. I wouldn't change my life for anything because my teal is just outstanding, but it's lonely sometimes. And and I hope that everyone listening says, maybe I do need to reach out a little bit more. Maybe I do need to find that group. Maybe I do need to ask for help. Maybe I do just need to be honest with the school and a mom that has a child that's neurologically typical and say, I just need you to listen to me because this is hard and I need a friend. So, okay, I'm going to stop talking. You keep talking.
No, that's the core of everything, right? So my own story was, I was a 16-year-old mom. My son was born 9 weeks early. So now I'm a teenage mom with a sick baby. And the world is not kind to teenage moms. The world is not kind when that child develops and has a very unique learning style that you're fighting for, and nobody will believe you. They think his problem is you. And it was, because I was young and I was lonely and I was terrified and I was constantly second guessing myself in everything I did. And I was so freaking lonely. And I knew I had that to offer. I saw that loneliness in autism parents, and I thought, I know this, and I can attend to this. If the horseback riding works out, then that's really groovy. But for this time, I can have this parent in a space where this child is celebrated and revered. That's turning my wish into I can, yes, we can talk about the brain science and which Rupert does so beautifully, and the behavior things that Stephen Forth does so beautifully. But there's an attunement issue within the family that maybe that's where the woo is, but that's a critical factor. I always say this sensory work that we do, that's very central to horseboy work. Putting the child body to body on the horse, and we can talk about all of the neuroscience of why that works. But if I can do that, and that mom is talking to somebody who knows what it feels like to be her, and while they're talking, she can see that child is safe and enjoying themselves, that's when I did it. That's when we pulled off the miracle. That's when we did something really, really, really outstanding. And again, I'm going to credit Rupert for this, because that was, do you want to hear another really funny Joell being a judgy ass story?
I think it's also really cool because it's real. I mean, we're all judgy asses at certain points. So let's do this. Let's talk judgy ass. Okay. Go.
Here we go. Okay. So day 2 of the training and of the horseboy training, and I'm in, right? I'm down. We're good with this. I'm leaning in. I'm doing all of the things. And now I've got questions, right? Because I'm into it. Rupert and his partner Ileana, and they're showing all these fantastic techniques. And I raised my hand and I said, so what happens if you're doing all these great things and the parent is just jumping in and talking right over the top of you and just won't let you do what you need to do, la, 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 la. Rupert, and this is a group of probably 25 people, and I'm the cool girl, right? I'm the one with all the experience. He looks right at me and he says, say that again in an angry Godzilla voice. And I go, what? And he goes, say that again. And now he's aggressively saying it. Say that again in an angry Godzilla voice. And now I'm like red in the face and I'm kind of just backing up, like, what's happening? Did I miss something? And he screams at me, say that in an angry Godzilla voice. And now I want to throat punch him, right?
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed. I'm angry. I feel betrayed, all the things.
And you're getting yelled at.
Yeah. And my mouth is opening like a fish out of water. And he goes, how do you feel right now? And I just looked at him and I said, I don't even have words. And he goes, because that's what it feels like to be a special needs parent. If you can't listen to them, if you can't honor their journey, you're not doing it right. Yeah. So, yeah.
Wow.
So that was a very, very, very harsh lesson.
Yeah.
But I obviously never forgot it.
And it still has an impact on you. I could see physically that it you went right there. Like you immediately went right there when you were telling that story.
And to be able to physically tap into what it feels like, again, to be that parent who isn't heard, who isn't listened to. Everybody else is an expert on your child. I mean, what the heck? For me ever to spend a moment of thinking that I'm the expert on anybody else's child,
right,
and to lose respect for that family's journey was a really important lesson. It helped me tie it back to make sure that I was putting my money where my mouth is.
And wow, I don't even know what to say there. I'm just like, whoo.
I don't even. Yeah.
Ooh. So, okay. So I'm like, ooh, good stuff. I need to get in front of Rupert, it sounds like. Just as I don't know, it sounds like he'd push my buttons and it would be a good thing, I think.
Yeah, he's a expert level at that. Yeah.
Okay. So let's go back to, you never expect anything from the family when they come and visit you. Then what happens? What are the children coming for? What are the families coming for?
When they usually get here, we try and have a big bucket of apples or carrots. There's something about feeding horses treats. And then we have these two giant smelly bloodhounds that just kind of wander around and they slobber, and they're just super mellow, but super sweet, like really engaged. They're not just dogs that curl up, or they don't growl at people. They're pretty much like speed bumps,
Right.
Just giant furry speed bump.
Yeah.
And we just observe, like, what's this family about? Where are they at? What do they need? Is this a child that needs lots of movement, or is he, hiding behind mom and he's terrified and she's helping him? How involved does she want to be? Does she need to go for a long walk with a cup of tea in her hand, or does she need to be intimately involved with things? What's their school placement? How's that going? Having that conversation. What other therapy modalities and how are those going? How is the commute? Is it a punishing commute? Is this going to be really hard for them if we say, let's try and do this every week? So it's really a lot of exploration and a lot of listening. While we have most of our volunteers are teenage, mostly girls, and they have a lot of energy and they're very silly. And there's ridiculous things around here. So there's costumes hanging all around. So if that means that we've got to have volunteers with tutus on their heads, then that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
If it means taking the carrots and throwing them at the horses, parents are always like, oh, don't throw it at the horse. Or, like, no, it's a treat. It's a snack. He's going to pick it up off the ground. Or my favorite is, you give a kid a carrot and 9 times out of 10, especially ones with any kind of oral fixation, they're going to take a big old bite at it.
That's the first thing I was thinking. They just went straight in the mouth.
Yeah. Oh, no, it was sure. And people are like, oh no, that's for the horses. I went, no, it's a child eating a vegetable. Yeah. It's kind of great. I've got more carrots. So we try and present this feeling of abundance, right? Where there's abundant help, abundant support, abundant this. And it's, what Horseboy calls a yes environment. So, we really work hard with our staff and with our volunteers. Like, okay, now, we'll give them a scenario. Okay, a child goes running through the barn and 2 horses are tied up. What are you going to do? I'm going to stop that child and I'm going to tell that child that that's not safe. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, do it without ever saying no. Do it by grabbing the child in your arms and tickling them and making little farting noises on his belly, or, whatever is appropriate. So really creating this environment that's very abundant feeling, that's very spacious feeling. And then having the conversation with the family, like, where do you want to go from here? And some families are going to say, I really want him to ride independently. And that is their goal. And, and I know that nobody ever changed the world because they rode a horse well, or even looked good on a horse, but that's okay. That's where that family's at. So we honor that. Or if someone says, look, his gut issues are really, really hard and he's not sleeping, and the toe walking, and and say, oh, okay, well then, here's how we can introduce this regular rhythmic motion. And if it doesn't work on the horse, if he gets scared, we have the hammocks and we have the trampoline and we have if we need to support other therapies that are going on. So it sounds really new agey and silly, but to create this non-judgmental space to the extent that we can, and a true feeling of abundance and support, right? Knowing that this is a family, or making the assumption that this is a family that doesn't normally feel that.
Yeah.
And I remember really distinctly having a conversation with a family that we'd known for a long time, and they were looking for a middle school placement for their son, right? And this is a wonderful kid. He's got a lot of energy, and he's big and he runs around a lot, but he's just this beautiful boy. And so they went to this one school open house, and the staff came out and met them kind of on the front doorstep. And they said, look, there is nothing your child can do that we can't handle right now. He's cool. Go to the other, he's going to go over here to this room over here. You come over here. We'll do our little song and dance, but he's cool. He's good. And this family was so relieved and so cool and so sweet. 2 weeks later, the school called and they said, yeah, he's just not a fit. We just can't handle his behaviors. And so to take that family way up and then drop them down like that was a cruelty that wasn't intentional.
No.
But I thought, I never want to be the one that puts a family in that position. I want to be the one that says, we got this. We may need your help, especially if he has a seizure, or, if there's a toileting issue and we need some help cleaning up, but not to come on the other side and say, yeah, no, his behaviors are just too much.
When you talk about abundance, as you were talking, I was feeling how open your heart is.
No.
In order for you or any of us to have true abundance, I think we have to have these open hearts that just say, come on in, open arms. And I trust, which Rupert and you have already talked about. Trust is so important. And with that open heart and having these families be vulnerable with you and to trust you and to put their hopes on you and your foundation. I mean, that really is a lot to bear, but it sounds like you just really have found a beautiful niche within merging your horses and your love of children, because you can feel it when you're talking, just the love of children that you have, and then all the other things. But it's really cool. I love it. I can feel it from you as you're talking. So that's fun. So so let's say, would a parent come to you and say, my child isn't showing progress at school, and can we focus on learning at the foundation? Okay, that's what I figured. But would you give me some examples of maybe what that would look like as well? So we've got behavioral issues. You talked about sleep. You talked about digestive. So maybe we can talk a little bit about learning.
One-on-one learning is really how we're designed and evolved to be anyway. So if you can create that co-regulation and trust between the learner and the teacher, whatever that is. I have a theory that says that nobody has ever taught anybody anything. We can create an environment and invite curiosity in, but it really is up to the learner. If we optimize the environment for a learner to learn, that's the basis of intrinsic motivation, right? And I really honestly believe that. And if you think about your own learning journey, nobody ever taught you anything. You put yourself in a situation and you decided whether or not you wanted to learn it or not. My son was a very, very, very kinetic learner. He didn't just have to touch it and see it. He had to take it apart and squish it around and make a giant mess with it and then put it all back together in his own time. And that was the other thing, is that when I put time constraints around things, he would just shut down. And I realized it's not that he was slow. It's that he had this deep, deep, deep desire to really understand it. He didn't want to just answer the question. He wanted to take it all apart and understand it. And I thought, oh, this is really going to be hard in a classroom.
Yeah.
You know, this is just not his jam at all. And he wasn't motivated by impressing a teacher. He was so busy thinking, I just want to know how it really works. A general classroom really wasn't set up for that kind of a learner. And what a shame. What a shame, because this is a really curious person.
Mm-hmm.
This is a person who thinks mechanically, and he thinks in pictures and movement, and, you know, understands things about technology and understands things about physics that I will never be curious about. Right.
Right. Yeah.
As long as I flip the switch, you know, on the wall and the light comes on, I'm happy.
Me too.
I'm super happy. Right.
Yeah. I don't want to know how it works.
You saw that I have to have on-site, you know, tech help.
Exactly. Previous technical difficulties over here getting this recording started. Yeah. So did you work with horses with him right off the bat, or was this something that just came through as a result of a horse boy training?
Gosh, trying to make a Reader's Digest version of that story. Yeah. You know, horses were my thing. My love. And I was married to a racehorse trainer. So the racehorses were part of our life. You know, my son never knew life without horses in it. And it wasn't what really turned him on. When things got really, really, really hard with him as a teenager, and school was just torturous for him, and his life was really a struggle. A friend of mine who had a farm in Maui said, you know what? Why doesn't he just come to Maui and work for me? He's not going to go to school. It is his senior year. He's not going to finish. He can just come and work for me and he'll be in Maui. And he did. And that fell apart. And then through a series of things that happened, he ended up taking a saddle horse and a pack horse all the way up into the crater in Maui, a Haleakala, which is 4,000 feet, something crazy, and camping up in the crater of, you know, with just him and two horses in the crater of the volcano, you know, had his vision quest and decided that he wanted a different life. So the fact that horses played this pivotal role and this vehicle of movement up the mountain, whether it's the mythical or metaphorical mountain, but was really unexpected. He's 37 now, so he's all grown up. He's a farrier. His girlfriend is a very accomplished rider and trainer, so horses are very much a part of his life. And I didn't expect any of that. You know, well, you so also the fact that we share that.
Yeah. You also didn't force it on him.
Well, there were lots of times where
you tried
we did because it was our family business, but, and so I thought because of that it really wasn't his jam, but when he was able to choose it for himself,
right.
You know, he definitely, he has a way, and his own horse, you know, would go through a forest fire for him.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're magnificent animals. Teal is very attracted to horses. Horses and dolphins. Nice. Horses and dolphins. They're very
horses,
similar.
Dolphins, whales, hawks, and dogs. There's a string there that I'm not exactly sure what it is, but it's
yeah. Speaking of Hawaii, a group or a pod of about 600 dolphins who never leave the harbor came and literally came right under Teal. 600 dolphins.
Yeah.
And about 3 minutes after that, a whale shark went by. We're in the water. We're in the water. And I'm like,
in the water.
Oh, wow. This child, she just calls them in, and they're magnificent. And she's very, very calm with horses as well. Just very present with them. So to kind of go back to that question about the concept of learning,
do you create programs for children so they come every week to see you and you guys are doing specific learning programs? If I was a family to bring my child, what would a day look like with you, or a training session or a lesson? I don't know what you call them.
Sure. We call it barn time because horse time is a flow, but we schedule sessions 90 minutes apart. And some families come late, some come early, some stay late, some go home early. But it has to be, again, that abundance of what's going on for you. But the general structure is we've got one gal going through, we're seeing so much school refusal post-COVID right now.
Right.
So much of that. So I'll just use that because it comes up a lot. If you approach a young person who's going through school refusal and go, so how's school going? I mean, that's just like the douchiest thing you can do. So we may strategize as a group and have a couple of the teen girls, like when that person arrives, already having a conversation that's very loosely scripted as, I really was struggling going to school this week, but this happened and that happened. And, and I'm feeling a whole lot better. And I'm really glad that I went. But boy, Monday and Tuesday were hard. And then just invite that person into the conversation, or even say, I've been schooling this horse all week and he's so sick and tired of schooling. And I was just thinking maybe we'd go over here and have a few carrots before he needs to do anything. So it's pretty stealthy most of the time, which is a really fun, creative challenge. And I think, definitely my staff and our core volunteers really dig that creative challenge. And that really comes down to having the trust of that family. Got one young man that home is going through a lot of, teenage things and neurochemical changes. He can get really, really violent. And so we've scripted, conversations of, gosh, Hermes bit the heck out of me today. And it really, really, really hurts. And I don't know, I'm just trying to figure out, is he angry at me? Is he trying to tell me something? Do you have any ideas? And then using that metaphor to try and work through some of those things. I'm not answering your question straight on because it's really, the fun is in the stealthiness of it. But we've had kids with handwriting or fine motor skills. During the summer, we'll paint the horses all the time. You're painting a bunch of horses and you're trying to run a nonprofit. Money's always an issue. So my cheapskate thing is to go to the dollar store and get creamy white shampoo, because Suave or Pantene or whatever. And you mix that with the tempera powder that you get from the teacher store.
Yes.
And then it's basically shampoo, right? So they're writing and then they rinse the horse off. And guess what? Your horse has had a bath, which means they have permission to write anything they want. Yeah. But then it's their job to rinse it off. Yeah. Right. So, I had one kid, the first thing he said is he's like, one kid's drawing a heart, one kid's drawing, a rainbow, and one kid's like, can I draw a pentagram in blood red? And I'm like, yeah, you just got to rinse it off when we're done.
Yeah.
So again, that abundance and that playfulness and that ridiculousness, and also being that place that just goofy enough to try anything. So we feed the horses these little hay cubes, and they're about 3 inches of a rectangle. And so we've gone and we've done writing things, with the hay cubes and made things, and we've made little movies, or, we've had kids that are issues with executive function. Well, guess what? We're going to write a movie script and they're going to direct it. Right. So changing that power dynamic where they're in control and they're running the show, I find is usually one of the best ways to just really tease out that curiosity and that intrinsic motivation. But you have to figure out creative ways to give somebody who's so used to never being in a position of power and control.
Right.
All the control. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, everybody knows I end up bringing this around to Teal every single time because I can, and I like her.
Because you're a mom.
I'm a mom. I'm her mom. I'm her biggest advocate. But I'm thinking, as you're going through all these examples, of course, I'm sitting there thinking, oh, I wonder if Teal would benefit from that. Oh, I wonder if Teal, she doesn't have a lot of interest in school right now. It doesn't seem like she has this interest. She's interested in people. She's interested in how you react and your emotions. I mean, she's an empath, and I mean, she just is learning. Getting her to sit in the classroom and learn something is tricky. Additionally, as I've talked about before, it's hard to measure her learning. She understands absolutely everything that we say, and she's listening all the time. A lot of the times I figured out that she's listening when she shouldn't have been listening, but, or maybe, just we're talking adult stuff and oops, she's listening because she is, and she's pointing at like where, yeah, exactly. But I mean, every parent knows that situation where you're like, oh my, you were listening. But anywho, so I'm sitting here thinking, I wonder if creating an environment that is more like this for her would create that intrinsic desire to show that she knows something, even counting. And, she's nonverbal, or what we call verbalish, but the words aren't coming out. Like, she's not saying 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, let's count to 100. No, we're not doing that.
Well, and what's the motivation, right? Yeah. To count to 100, but music is math. Music is physics. Music is, rhythm is all there. And if you compare that with some type of movement, and all of a sudden you're skipping and you're finding and you're clapping, on the 1 and the 3 or the 2 and the 4, there's your math, there's your counting, especially if you know that her receptive language skills are there. Yeah. The expressive stuff is going to come out in that space of joy. And yes, I realize that I sound really Pollyanna, as if life is just one big Disneyland ride. But environment is 90% of the battle, and 90% of our effort in creating academics and creating, educational theory. And environment is 90% of the equation. When I do trainings for teachers or for paraprofessionals, the first thing I do is I go around the room and I have people introduce themselves with their most significant or with a very significant educational experience. And then I boil that down to 3 or 4 words and I put it there on the whiteboard. And then I get done and I read through everybody's and I make eye contact and make sure that I heard them correctly. And then I go, none of these things happen in a classroom. Not a single thing happened in a classroom. And these are teachers. And it always works out that way. And you say, and 95% of our time is spent in a classroom. Mm-hmm. And this is what you remember, let alone somebody who's really struggling and who really hates. You're a teacher. You must have liked being in a classroom if you decided to spend your job in there. Imagine the kids that hate the classroom.
Are you familiar with unschooling?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, this is kind of like what you're following the child's lead. You're creating opportunity. Yeah. How are you incorporating? I mean, is that something that you have parents coming to you and saying, can we do some of these things at home if they're not being accepted into the school system?
Well, during the pandemic, we had a bunch of young people who weren't able to go back to college. We had so many pre-verbal people or limited verbal people that Zoom learning was not appropriate at all. And so we hired college students to be the one-on-one tutors, and we just did everything outside. And they brought their talkers, they brought whatever, and we winged it 100%. But it was that one-on-one, and there was no expectation, right? Because, Zoom wasn't going to work. So the great thing is that we could just throw the expectations out the windows. We didn't have to measure anything. Anything was better than this person putting their head through the window, which was happening, right? As you probably know.
Yeah. And in our case, it was me putting my head through the window. Yeah. Right. Teal was just fine with Zoom. I was not so thrilled. Okay. Let's just be honest. I am not alone in that comment right there. No. There's a lot of moms listening in the car and they're like, oh my God. Okay.
Oh my God. Yeah. The Zoom days. Right. So we did that. And it was another horseboy program called New Leaf Triangle that's in Milton Mowbray in the UK. he told me, he's like, Joelle, the population I'm working with, nobody thinks that these learners can learn anything. So there's no expectations. And guess what? My learning trajectory is off the charts, not just in relation to what they thought people could learn, but when we gave up the expectation. And I think that sounds kind of Pollyanna-ish, but I think the important part to giving up the expectation is trusting that learning is natural and trusting that your child does learn, can learn, will learn, loves to learn.
Yeah.
And then just eliciting that.
And that's definitely that unschooling approach. We haven't talked about unschooling on here, but I think we probably should. I will be bringing someone in on that, because it's
just, it's what we find, Rupert and I have screened the Horseboy film together probably half a dozen times or more. And I watch these families come up to him afterwards, and they're in pain afterwards rather than enthusiastic. And they all say, I can't go to Mongolia. I have a job. I have other children. It's not like I can throw my child on an airplane and go to Mongolia. And he always answers them the same. He says, going to the grocery store is your Mongolia. You go to Mongolia every day. So why not take a chance and do something crazy? And it doesn't mean going to actual Mongolia, but it may mean saying, school isn't working, so why not try unschooling? Mm-hmm. Or it happens every time, that somebody just comes in so much pain and they're like, I can't do this. And then what they're saying, what you see in their face is, I'm just not that good of a parent. And
that's exactly what it is. I can't do enough, so I'm a horrible person. Uh-huh. I can't do that.
There's that loneliness and there's that isolation. And, and we all know enough about the neuroscience of co-regulation. If that parent doesn't feel heard, respected, and attended to, and loved, how do you help that child? And so, you do it the same way that I learned with the homeless shelter, with the families. You love that family where they're at. And you attend to the fact that we all need tribe. And when mom is regulated, everybody's going to do okay. Mm-hmm.
You're going to have a waiting list of like 500 after we put this episode out. And I'm one of them. Teal's coming down there. I don't care. I'm not getting on the waiting list. I'm breaking through the doors. You think I'm kidding? No.
No, we just have to do, more. COVID derailed us quite a bit, but taking the movement method ideas and precepts and doing a training program for paraprofessionals in the school district. School districts know that they don't invest in the paras. They know what it costs them with constant turnover, and the paras really want to learn. So I spend a lot of time trying to think, what is my highest best use? How do I knock this waiting list down? Or how do I mentor more programs to do more of this? I really think that paraprofessional training programs within the school district is a beautiful way to start helping families like right away, because when you're para, it feels supported and engaged and understands enough about the neuroscience and understands the signs of when someone's getting dysregulated and what you can do about it. Then suddenly the whole community benefits, right? Because mom's picking up the child at school and not getting that report. Right. She's actually getting good news. And oh my gosh, we had the greatest day. And did you know he likes strawberries? I had no idea. We ate strawberries. Or we found new things on the talker, and here's how this works. I think that's a really beautiful way to drop pebbles in the pond and see those waves.
Well, it just sounds like we need like 15 more of you. How are you with cloning?
I have to say that we have a really young staff here, and they are better than I've ever been, because we've been doing this for 20 some odd years and built this platform, and then them with their young energy and their ideas to be supported in being able to be silly and being able to be the kind of teachers and caregivers that they wish that they would have had God, they're good. They're so good. So there is a lot of hope. I think we're going to have a wave of educators that are going to do great things.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
How can people find you and how can they give you money?
Well, they can find us at squarepegfoundation.org.
Which I do agree with Rupert. Great name. Do agree with him.
Thank you. Thank you. You'll see on the homepage, there's a series of films that we did that are actually mostly family stories. They're kind of fun to watch. And we have a $50,000 matching grant. So everything we donate is up to $50,000 is going to be matched, which is really exciting. And that's going to help us build these paraprofessional training programs and hire more people and build out facilities so that we can knock down the now 500 people waiting list, and mentor more programs, across the country. And across the world, because of what the Horse Boy program has really built. We have this international community, and all my dreams of being able to travel internationally. Remember, I was the pregnant teenager.
Yeah.
Suddenly I'm traveling and teaching internationally, which is something that definitely, checks off my life boxes and brings me a lot of joy and satisfaction and excitement. So
turning I wish into I can.
Indeed.
Okay, before we go, what is one word you would use to describe a child with special needs?
Possibilities. Yeah. Maybe that's just it. Redefining our ideas of possibilities.
Joelle, thank you so very much for spending some time with us and educating us on the amazing programs that you have, and then just filling us up with some more abundance.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you found one or two meaningful nuggets of information to make your day better. If you think there's value in what we do, please take a moment to tell another friend, family member, or a caregiver. We'd love to hear from you at forourspecialkids@gmail.com. You can send in a question, a comment, a topic that you'd like to learn more about, or if you'd like us to highlight a certain person, please send that information to us. It makes our show so much better and so much more valuable for you. Our Facebook and Instagram handle is For Our Special Kids. And finally, remember to witness the wonder and the wisdom within yourself and others. Until next time.